tuning back into the Zephyr Wellness channel on YouTube. My name is Jake Wiskershin, and I was listening to a psychologist out of Canada named Jordan Peterson. You can look him up. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel of his own where he offers lectures and seminars like you would give in a college campus setting, but for free on YouTube, and they're wonderful. And they span many diverse topics, from religion to philosophy to sociology, of course psychology, history, leadership, all sorts of things. It's really fabulous. I have really started following him recently, and I find him to be almost a modern day philosopher. And I think in an age where we have a lack of philosophical thinking and a lot more reactionary emotional responses to things, I think it's a nice breath of fresh air that brings a lot of reason and balance to our conversations. But one of the things that came across my consciousness that he was sharing was the idea that pursuing happiness is, to use his phrase, or to paraphrase it, is rather idiotic. And he even says it's harsh. But I say something similar in my podcast on Noggin Notes about don't pursue happiness. And I wrote an article about this. It's on the Zephyr Wellness Media and Articles tab. And the reason you don't want to pursue happiness is because happiness is an emotion like any emotion. It's got its beginning, its middle, and its end, and it is fleeting. So once you pursue happiness, if you are to find it, it's gone as soon as you find it, because like any other emotional experience, it's temporary. So what we want to do is we don't want to pursue happiness or joy in and of itself. What we want to do is pursue things that bring us joy and happiness. And we want to embrace the idea that life is not supposed to be happy. I think that we're inundated with a culture of comparison that says that whatever you've got going on is not good enough for you, and what will make you happy is if you get this other next thing, such as the next iPhone or greener grass, is one that's been around for hundreds of years. And in so doing, then you will arrive at happiness. But like I just illustrated, as soon as you arrive, it's gone. So the idea here is that I want to invite you into a depth of meanings and significance in your life such that you can find happiness wherever you are, regardless of what you may be experiencing or certainly what possessions you may hold, because possessions too are also quite fleeting, as are emotional experiences, as are almost everything in life. If we're not anchored, if we're not rooted in something that's meaningful and deep and significant, then we're not going to find true joy and bliss. What we may end up finding along the way is pleasure, because we got a lot of content-y, surface level things that are pleasurable, such as ball games or drug usage, or even just this drive. It's pleasurable, but unless I find meaning and significance in my drive, I'm not going to experience joy. Just as a side note, I am driving again through the middle of Nevada, but this is a different road than the last video I made. This one is Interstate 80. I'm coming back from Lovelock, where we do some services in Pershing County in the school districts, and it's again beautiful. Again after rainstorms, and the shadows and light are amazing. But and it's pleasurable. It feeds my senses. It brings me delight. But what really brings me the joy is knowing that I'm helping impact families and children in a community that suffers from a lack of resources. So the drive suddenly is meaningful. It's not tedious and boring and some task that's simply to be tolerated. I find great significance in this. The fact that I have a tripod that I can mount my phone to and record videos through this little lapel mic that I got for $20 on Amazon, it's awesome. I mean, that's really cool. Now here's the counterbalance though. As I allow myself to experience this joy, I risk pain, because I might not actually find joy. And as soon as, to paraphrase Jordan Peterson's statement, you can Google this, just say Jordan Peterson on happiness. He pulls it from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who said, you don't really know joy until life deals you a serious blow. And what happens in that moment is you experience something else, sadness. Sadness has to be felt at its depth in order to bring perspective to the joy that we seek. If we really want bliss, we have to open ourselves up and become vulnerable enough to invite the potential sadness of not hitting our goals, not meeting our objectives, maybe missing the mark, or having it all taken away from us at once. God forbid that would ever happen. That, somebody's house gets consumed by fire, as happened recently in Northern California to an entire town. That's crazy. By the way, if you want to support that effort, buy the Resilience IPA that's produced by either Sierra Nevada Brewing Company or some of the other breweries across the country. If you find Resilience IPA, you'll know that money is going to help the victims of the Camp Fire in Northern California. I don't want to lose my possessions. I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose anything in my life. I don't want tragedy to strike. I don't want my employees to leave the business for greener pastures. I don't want any of that stuff to happen, but it will. And life will deal blows of misery. And if I'm not equipped for that, to know that on the other side of that misery is intense, pure joy, because I haven't allowed myself to be vulnerable enough to receive it, what I end up doing is shutting off my ability to experience life as a whole in its broad variety, varied scope that brings me all sorts of things that aren't just quantified in are you happy or are you unhappy? Are you satisfied or are you unsatisfied? Do you or don't you have the newest iPhone when compared with your neighbor? Life's not that simple. Life is much more diverse than that, and we want to embrace diverse experiences along the way. But the only way we can truly get there is being vulnerable enough to receive that stuff. Vulnerability requires intimacy. Intimacy requires practice. It requires letting go. And it requires the knowledge that I can experience an emotional upheaval and tolerate it. Emotions are not to be avoided. I've said this repeatedly in podcasts and videos and lectures and whatnot. Emotions are not to be avoided. They're to be embraced, analyzed, and let go of so that we can experience the next one coming. I hope this did something for you. I hope that you learned something. If you want to learn more, keep tuning into the channel, but you can also download the Noggin Notes podcast and specifically the Noggin Notes app. I would highly recommend that so you can track your emotional functioning and make notes along the way. I mean, I'm doing this as if I'm texting and I'm not texting. But that's what you do with an app. You log your notes. And then it creates a timeline. And on that timeline, you can see, hopefully, insights about where you grew and where you developed and apply that knowledge. So download Noggin Notes, gain some awareness into your own functioning, specifically your emotional functioning, and learn to be vulnerable, learn to be intimate, have good, deep relationships, not only with other human beings, but with life itself, because God gave us this earth and our relationships for the sole purpose of creating meaning and depth of experience, so that we can, live our lives to the fullest. If we're walling people off and keeping things at arm's length, you're not going to get to it. And by virtue of not being deep, life just ends up being shallow. It's very fleeting and temporary, and really, who wants that? Thanks for listening or watching, and again, on behalf of the Zephyr Wellness team and the Noggin Notes folks, I wish you great mental wellness. Bye-bye.